Very good evening, all of you, in this community and beautiful Sunday evening. So, today's topic is RTH Act. Do government have right to enact that RTH Act? To my limited understanding, what it includes is free outdoor and indoor patient department services, medicines, and diagnostic in public health institutions, emergency treatments and care at all healthcare providers, whether it is a public health or private hospitals, without any delay waiting for prepayment or police clearance. And other things that reiterated in this act is right to receive information, informed consent, referral transport, and grievances readdressal. So the problem areas that the reason that people are opposed in Rajasthan are these areas where if residents can avail free treatment at any clinical establishment, then that may violate right to carry business for private hospitals. There are no reimbursement plans in place as of now, where private hospitals struggling to get them back in various yojanas in place already. I mean, there are a lot of yojanas has been going on, and I have my friends running hospitals in Gujarat and Rajasthan. They see the same issues and difficulties getting reimbursement from the government for various insurance, because there are third-party insurance. And so by enacting this act, there will be a huge cost burden to the state, where there are no provision as of now. And the fourth is the grievances readdressal. That mechanism may violate right to privacy, because there is no clarity on who will who will access to the web portal. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our today's topic. Today's speaker to justify this topic is Dr. Sanjay Nagral, sir. He is a senior consultant and director, research and academics at Jaslok Hospital and Research Center, Mumbai. He got his training from St. J.S. Medical College and KM Hospital. He is currently at Jaslok Hospital. He is honorary surgeon and head department of surgery, KB Baba Municipal General Hospital. He's also publisher and editor at Indian Journal of Medical Ethics, chairperson at Forum for Medical Ethics Society, a member executive committee, Declaration of Istanbul Custodian Group. And apart from that, he has published various publications in national and international journals. When it comes to medical ethics, he's a very known figure in the field. So without further ado, I would like to hand over this task to Dr. Nagral, sir.
So first of all, on a slightly formal note, thank you. You said beautiful Sunday evening. I don't think too many people want to spend beautiful Sunday evening listening to talk, and that too on the Right to Health Act. But thank you for all of you who are here. And indeed, for me, it is indeed a matter of privilege, because I think to talk to doctor colleagues on this topic is for me is no longer very common. There was a time when I used to be speaking in medical associations on some of these issues, but I have increasingly realized that when it comes to medical associations, and I mean the more established medical associations, they no longer want to call me, because what I say is quite often quite contrary to their position. So I have been many years back outcast by the Indian Medical Association.
Sound क्यों नहीं आ रही है?
Now, having said that, I have been writing, and as Gaurav said, not just in medical journals, but been writing a fair amount in the popular press. I ran a column in the Mumbai Mirror for almost 1.5 years now. I do a column in the Hindustan Times and been writing on matters of health policy and healthcare ethics, etc., in many publications. Now, I also want to quickly say that I'm not an expert at analyzing health policy. Incidentally, I just noticed Gaurav has a MPH, but I suspect that is from the USA. So I don't know. I don't.
Yeah, that was long time back, sir. So
But I am
yeah.
suddenly scared of you because you have an official degree in public health. But that's interesting because, as some of you may know, that in the US at least,
Yeah,
many surgeons go into MPH and
yeah,
have a sort of understanding of public health, and there is an increasingly big global movement called global
yeah,
surgery, where uh,
yeah,
people are interacting with even with public health professionals. But I was about to say that really the reason that maybe you chose this topic, besides the fact that it was in the news, is because I wrote a piece about 2 weeks ago for the Hindustan Times, where I asked the question, why is it that doctors should oppose such an act? And of course, I uh, sort of, if some of you have read it, I made some arguments. I also raised some questions about specifically about the medical associations as to why they oppose these acts, etc. And I'm told that it was circulated widely. Certainly on Twitter, I got a lot of pushback, a lot of support. Twitter is, of course, polarizing, but there was a lot of support and a lot of pushback from my doctor colleagues. Um, but I will come to my arguments a little later. But I also think that the reason that we must address this topic is because it's actually a reflection of a certain tension that currently exists between what the state, which is the state in any part of India, or the central government of India, wants to do in terms of how it offers healthcare to its people, versus the fact that there are many private establishments, big and small, who have a different logic. Therefore, the logic of the state and the logic of the healthcare industry uh, is clashing. And I think, therefore, this is a reflection of that clash. Normally, you would expect that the intentions of any government in terms of how it wants to deliver healthcare is in tune with the healthcare professionals. But clearly there is a long history of this clash. And I must also tell you that the Rajasthan clash, or the Rajasthan conflict, is actually one in a series of many. Uh, and I will just go back to that a little in terms of some of the previous situations like this, where governments have tried to control costs, uh, and that has been opposed by the medical profession. Uh, so let me begin by also saying that there is really uh, a constitutional provision, uh, and this constitutional provision comes from cases, comes from there's a very famous judgment called the, if you read literature on this, called the Parmanand Katara versus Union of India. Again, I'm not a expert on medico legal history, medico legal cases, but this is a case which is often quoted in the context of this discussion. It's a 1950 case where somebody had an accident and was taken to a hospital, was turned away, etc. And the Supreme Court said that Article 21 of the Constitution, which is the right to life, also includes right to emergency medical care, and that therefore they actually, in that case, held the hospital guilty. not treating the person. So there seems to be this constitutional support for one is emergency care, but in general, of course, our constitution, as you know, supports the idea of right to life. Now, there has been a debate about what does uh, right to life encompass, and in various cases, various interpretations have been done. But we must not forget that in any nation, we are bound by certain constitutional provisions. Now, before I go to, therefore, how the Indian state has tried to uh, intervene in terms of how people access healthcare, we have to also just step back a little, and I think it's important that we look back for a few minutes on how the trajectory of healthcare in India. Now, of course, none of us was around when India had acquired its independence, but we know from history that we were ruled by the British. And the British, as you know, have a system called the NHS. I've had I would say, the good fortune to work in the NHS, but any of you who has worked in the NHS knows how the NHS works. And clearly it is, I think, still, with all its challenges, a very good example of what is called a universal healthcare system. And certainly any observer of global healthcare will tell you that Europe, which is largely goes by universal healthcare, today is considered, and to an extent Canada, although these are all Western countries, is considered a good model for healthcare. Whereas the United States, and apologies to you, Gaurav, in case you, is considered a disastrous model because
I agree.
because of the way in which it's based purely on insurance. But we'll not digress there. But suffice to say that the British actually tried when they left to propose a similar model. So there was a committee called it's not actually Bore, but Bohr, Joseph Bohr. And this committee was formed to suggest or lay out a plan for healthcare in India post-independence. And it's a very interesting recommendations. Essentially, they recommended a universal healthcare model, partly based on the NHS. There was really no idea at that time that there would be such a big private sector. Post-independence, there was always a small private sector, as in small-time doctors. So yes, there were individual doctors, there were small hospitals, they were largely faith-based hospitals run by sort of socially oriented groups, etc. Missionary hospitals, of course. But that time, so therefore, we had this aim as a country to have a publicly based public healthcare system, which would deliver a majority of care. Now, what happened, and that is a little murky area as to how we moved from that aim and that intention to what now is the world's largest proportion of private healthcare. This is something we must know, that India is one of the most privatized of healthcare systems in the world. In terms of the care that is given, the percentage of care that is given. So there's no question that private care delivers a large proportion of healthcare to Indians, including ordinary Indians. It's not just about the wealthy, but including very, very ordinary Indians who access today private care. Having said that, it is true, and this is something that all of you, I'm sure, have had as a lived experience in your day-to-day work, that a significant proportion of the population wants to access private care. And again, partly it is because the public healthcare system has not kept up in terms of its ability to deliver. More importantly, and this is my view, and I've written on this separately, that I think the public healthcare system is both perceived and is actually quite inefficient, quite unfriendly, and and is actually very hostile to the poor. I worked in a public healthcare system for a very long time, or many of us have trained there. But the fact is that people don't like, even the poorest of the poor don't like to go there. And this is one of the biggest challenges and failures of this country. And when, of course, politicians talk about changing healthcare, yes, it is true that they're actually pointing one finger at themselves, because over the years, our public healthcare system has not really met the demands of people. But just to come back to what I was saying, therefore, the system we have today is heavily loaded in terms of the private sector. I will not take you through statistics, detailed statistics, which are all available, but incidentally, India spends one of the lowest amounts on what's called public spending on health. So 0.9% of GDP. At one time, it was 1.3. So if you put it on the scale of countries, we spend very, very little on public health or public health care. Now, this is one of the great mysteries why we do so. It's beginning to change slowly, but by the way, we spend less than even in some of our South Asian neighbors, Bangladesh. We are spending less than Bangladesh, for example. I think what has happened is that the private sector becoming so dominant, governments forgot over the years that that they have to spend for public health care, and that and they were getting away with it. Let me put it that way. They were getting away with it. They were being allowed to get away with it. COVID was a rude reminder, and post-COVID, of course, there has been a lot of talk on, therefore, how all this should be improved, and COVID, suddenly everybody woke up. But clearly, this has been a colossal failure of India's political class, and maybe all of us as a collective, that we spend very little. On the other hand, we are very high in private spending at 4% of the GDP. But what this does, and what is, I think, of relevance to today's discussion partly, is that this results in a very sad situation, which is that a lot of ordinary Indians are pushed into what the term that is used in health economics is called catastrophic health care, catastrophic health expense, I'm sorry. So you suddenly have an emergency, you suddenly have a major illness, you're not covered by any reasonable insurance, and you get admitted for a major illness, and you know it, if you are, all of you are working in healthcare, that today you get admitted for, let's say, a major emergency, you can end up spending lakhs of rupees in days, if not weeks. And if you need ICU care, so this out-of-pocket expenditure, and that the term is out-of-pocket, is unprecedented across the globe. If you examine most countries across the world, except pockets in South Asia, nobody spends out of pocket. Nobody goes to hospital and is asked for a deposit of 1 lakh rupees at 2 a.m. or is asked to pay suddenly 4 lakh rupees in 2 days. So clearly, this is a peculiar model. And this has led to a lot of challenges, angst, conflicts. I would even put a part of the blame of the violence on medical professionals on this aspect of our healthcare. So this is peculiar in India. By the way, there are studies to show that it is also a cause of impoverishment. There was a link made with farmer suicides, which were due to a significant number, which were due to healthcare related expenses. Employers in India spend very little. Insurance cover is still very limited. So the figure about 3 years back, which may change and which I'm sure is already must have changed, but still it is staggering 82% spent from out of pocket when it comes to healthcare. So we must keep that in mind. Okay, so that's a little bit about the challenge of the cost of care, the challenge of how we have gone from independence. But there's one more feature of healthcare in India, which I say this slowly, that actually medical professionals in India uh, probably do not appreciate, or sometimes we tend to not be cognizant of this, which is that we are actually one of the most unregulated of healthcare systems, and our professional work is one of the most unregulated in the world. So, for example, if you want to start a hospital in Mumbai, uh, in some particular place today, okay, you will have to take some licenses, but you can start it. In most countries, you will not be allowed to start one. Even the most free of countries will ask you, why are you starting a hospital here? They will look at the density of the hospitals there. So this whole notion that we have, that we are being controlled by governments, actually is on a relative scale not true. In fact, in our day-to-day work, if you again examine our work, and that includes me also, nobody actually tells you that you can't use an antibiotic. Nobody actually tells you what you can prescribe. Whereas any of you who has worked in an organized healthcare system, including the United States, will tell you that you cannot be prescribing, you cannot be treating somebody uh, by your own thoughts and feelings and gut feeling and whatever it could be. Sometimes even your hospital's interest, it could be many other interests. So we are actually quite unregulated. And if you remember COVID, this was brought home. If you remember the prescriptions in COVID, if you remember the kind of stuff was, and I'm not putting the blame on modern medical professionals. I think this includes the entire healthcare system, where there was complete chaos about medications, how people should. Some hospitals were doing CT scans for everybody. Some hospitals were doing X-ray. Somebody was doing weekly COVID swabs. So there was complete chaos. So clearly, actually, when it comes to regulation, we are, and this is something we can take up later, but we are actually under-regulated. And of course, I must immediately add here another feature of India's healthcare, and I am cognizant of that, and that's a big challenge, which is that we also have in India a large presence of the what I would term as non-allopathic or non-modern medicine doctors. It's a huge community. It is a community which I must say plays an important role in healthcare. And I have written on this also in some other context, that whilst it is true that it's very ununiform, and their ability to treat is somewhat can be compromised by their training. But the fact of the matter is, today many hospitals in India actually run their services based on the non-MBBS doctors. So it is a large workforce. And even in COVID, that workforce was used. And if you go to some parts of India, they are the ones who are giving the services. And ordinary people really don't care if they have a problem as to what is somebody's degree. They care that somebody looks at them and looks after them and gives them some treatment. But yes, that is also a challenge that we face, which is slightly peculiar to India and South Asia. There are alternative medicine practitioners in all parts of the world, but in India, they are huge, and they are also part of the mainstream healthcare system. Finally, we must acknowledge, before we go to the issue at hand, which is the Rajasthan bill, is the changing nature of healthcare in India. And I think anybody who is now in healthcare practice will identify with the fact that we are rapidly changing, at least in urban areas. We have a lot of new players. So we had a private healthcare system since independence. It had grown. But what we are seeing in the last few years is the emergence of a new player called the corporate hospital. But this is not just a fancy term. This is a player who we must understand is clearly for profit. Clearly, their aim is to make profits, and they have make no bones about it. Number two, many of them are chains. There is foreign investment. There is international capital moving into India. So now that is something that we have to recognize. And whilst, again, we can discuss its pros and cons, but the fact of the matter is, therefore, healthcare has become more and more expensive, even for the middle class. And today, even the middle class is saying, what's happening? What are these costs? And getting huge bills, etc. So we must take note of the fact that this player is there now. Obviously, it has brought in technology. Obviously, it has brought in maybe a certain professionalism. Maybe the hospitals are better equipped. There is a attempt to look at standards. Also, although it's a very incestuous attempt, because they themselves have formed something called NABH, and they are looking after themselves, judging themselves. But doesn't matter. At least there's a move towards it. So this is a new phenomenon, and increasingly some of these hospitals are having tie-ups with global players. So with this scenario now, and some of the background that I gave you, I think I will quickly move on to Rajasthan. And before I plunge into, well, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on Rajasthan. I'm not from Rajasthan, neither have I studied Rajasthan in detail. But I just want to say that about 15 years ago, the central government of India started moving on an act called the Clinical Establishments Act. And actually, this act is very, very basic. Basically, the act tries to make a list of what are the healthcare establishments in India, gets all healthcare establishments to register themselves. Actually, the act also still trying to grade the types of healthcare institutions, and it has asked various states to enact the act. How do I know about this in some detail? Because as I have related in the article I wrote, I was a member of the Maharashtra State Committee, which was set up 7 or 8 years back to promulgate the local act. And there were about 15 of us, representatives of various players, including there was Indian Medical Association, there was the Association of Medical Consultants, etc. And the reason I say that is because, and I've written in my piece, that in that meeting, I was representing a public spirited healthcare organization, a network of what is called health. It's a health network across Maharashtra, who requested me to be one of their representatives as somebody who practices in the profession. And one of the lessons which I have explained in that article, I realized is that when any such act is formed, there are a lot of interests that are represented, and these interests are often opposing. And therefore, any such legislation needs to, on one hand, consider all the interests, but on the other hand, finally, the conflicts need to be resolved if we have to move ahead with the enactment of these acts. And this is exactly what happened there. So Rajasthan is known now because of the public controversy. At that time, in one of the early meetings, we discussed what is emergency care. And I proposed, I said that I'm a surgeon. I work both in the public-private sector. I see everyday patients who get very poor treatment in the golden hour. And I said, let's use this to create a system in Maharashtra, which identifies trauma centers, which has a link with ambulances, and which therefore has a centralized trauma care system. And after making a presentation for 15 minutes on all this, how it works, etc., so the government was quite interested. But then when we got to the nitty-gritty, the same question came up. The representatives of the private hospital said, okay, but who will pay? How will we transfer patients? What if we don't have the facilities? So we actually suggested that the government identifies certain hospitals as trauma care hospitals, train people in life support, has ambulances. 108 had been launched by that time. So I said 108 is linked to these various hospitals and create a system. And we actually spent 2 full meetings debating this. And finally, and this is actually something which I was quite affected by. The whole thing was did not come through because of very strong opposition from the IMA, which said that there are many nursing homes, many small hospitals in rural Maharashtra. They accuse me of being an urban person. They accuse me of being working in big hospitals, and they said that you have no idea, etc. And this kind of thing will not work, and let the government manage this. So therefore, I realized that these are these interests. So this Rajasthan Act is actually not, this kind of attempts have happened in many states to have a emergency care system, to create a way to pay if a patient lands up in a private hospital with an emergency, to create a referral system. And also, of course, this act, the Rajasthan Act, like the Maharashtra Act and the Clinical Establishment Act, also tries to create standards of care. It also goes on to recommend standard treatment guidelines. And that's, again, an area of major contention and major opposition from professional organizations, because they say that how can you have standard guidelines? Now, actually, if you examine any country of the world, you will find standard treatment guidelines. Standard treatment guidelines do not mean that you have to treat every patient with the same medication. What it means, it lays out a certain plan. So whether it is malaria, whether it is common diseases, there is a plan laid out so that tomorrow there is a controversy, or tomorrow somebody wants to know what is the standard way to treat something, there it is publicly available. So these acts which are coming in actually are an attempt by the government, both the central and the state, to actually fill a gap in the way healthcare has been managed in India, which has been to parallel systems working not necessarily in tandem, for that matter, sometimes in opposite directions. So you have a public healthcare system which is under the government, which attempts to give care in a certain way. And then we have this big private system. And therefore, the governments realized that if they have to push through a certain promise that they make of delivering care, they have no option but to involve the private sector. So I think the Rajasthan Act and what it attempts to do is actually 2 or 3 things. One is, of course, and I said this in my piece also, it is actually a clear admission by governments that on certain accounts, governments have failed in delivering basic care. Now, who's responsible for that? Whether we are collectively responsible, that's a question that we need to debate. Because if we say this, governments could say that, look, therefore, let's have all doctors in India mandatorily serving in government hospitals for 5 years or something like that. So basically, if you look at it, it's of course government, but it's also a collective responsibility. So, but it's an admission. So therefore, they are forced to what is called buy care through various schemes. So as you know, in all states now, there are publicly funded schemes, including the PMJAY, which is the flagship scheme of the Modi government, which is the Prime Minister Jan Arogya Yojana, which also buys care from private sector hospitals. Now, in Mumbai or places like Mumbai, big hospitals have stayed away from it. But let me tell you that if you go to smaller places, there are hospitals today, including in Maharashtra, where 80% of the patients are coming from publicly funded schemes. So it is not true to say that doctors and institutions are not working under the conditions of government funded or government schemes. For that matter, in our everyday work till today, independent of any act, we know that we work under the under the terms set by insurance companies. If you have a patient who comes from a third-party payer, whether it is a big company or insurance, obviously the payer always dictates what you can do. So clearly, the move that Rajasthan was attempting to make was to say that any person who needs care in an emergency has the right, given the limitations of availability of government hospitals, to walk into a private hospital, seek care, and the government will pay for it. Now, of course, we know that payments are a problem, and I think Gaurav referred to that payments are delayed, payments are often very delayed. But, I think let us be fair, a little reflective, and say that today also in our work, insurance payments come after 6 months. They come after 1 year. No insurance pays immediately. So if you are going towards a model of third-party payment in healthcare, clearly you'll have to wait for payment. Now, how that economics works for individual hospitals, especially standalone small institutions, I'm aware that that's a challenging kind of a model. But I'm just putting it to you that when there is third-party payment, there is always some amount of monitoring, some amount of delay, some amount of control of costs. I also want to remind you that another area where we saw the same conflict, and I know I'm already exceeded half an hour, so I'll try and wind up now soon. But if you remember COVID, the government did intervene. Now you can say that was an extraordinary situation, wherein they brought in the Epidemic Act, the Disaster Management Act, and the costs of care were capped, and hospitals fell in line. By the way, hospitals fell in line. I mean, of course, they did not like it, but they fell in line. They fall in line when it comes to insurance payments. They fall in line when it comes to government schemes. And I think, if you look at it from a slightly impersonal and a slightly broad manner, actually, if your patient has third-party payment, and when you deal with patients who have third-party payment, your ability to give care, in a sense, is actually better. Because a patient who is paying every hour or every day, I must say this, at least in my practice, it's a huge source of stress for both parties. For the patient, certainly, but I think even as a treating doctor, for me and my team, because we have to constantly think about whether, number one, what is going to happen to the bill, number two, whether we are making the patient bankrupt. Sometimes we end up doing strange things like shifting the patient elsewhere, which leads to a lot of anger, angst, and dissatisfaction. So the model of third-party payment is something which I think is actually makes, in my view, for better relations between the doctors and the patient. Finally, therefore, coming to Rajasthan and answering the question that was posed to me as my title of my talk, does the government have a right to enact a Right to Healthcare Act? So my answers would be the following. Number one, historically, it has the mandate, including from the Supreme Court. What that mandate involves is a matter of discussion. Number two, one of the government's strong arguments has been, and I think there is something in it, that medical education in India is funded. Of course, there are private institutions, but though that in government hospitals. Very often, the healthcare industry gets concessions. I certainly work in hospitals where they are charitable hospitals, where they get significant concessions from government. So this is a give and take, at least as far as the charitable hospitals are concerned. This is a give and take as far as the subsidies that are given to for medical education. Finally, they're already buying care. All the schemes, whether it is MPJY, PMJY, they're already buying care from the private hospitals. We are already, in a sense, part of this process. I think the challenge and the question that came up in a big way in Rajasthan, and therefore that is what probably kind of struck a raw nerve. But I think it's worth examining as a final part of my presentation is the concept of right to healthcare. Uh, so that healthcare it needs to be given. That we have a mandate to give care. We have a mandate to give emergency care. But is there a right? Is there a right for citizens? And I think that was the big challenge. And that is what has got individuals worried. Because if patients, which is ordinary citizens, which could be our relatives, which could be people known to us, which we are also sometimes patients, by the way, if they say that we have a problem, you please treat me because I know legally now there is a right to care, and they start raising that as an issue, that's something that our colleagues are worried about, and I can see where that comes from. I must confess that as a doctor working in another institution who has no direct stake in the hospital's ownership, I perhaps can have the luxury of saying that, look, this is my view on it, and that the conflict of interest that many doctors in India face, which is again quite unprecedented, which is that you own the hospital or you're invested in the hospital, or the everyday expenses of the hospital directly reflect on you, that your everyday pay is reflective of the hospital's volume, is a conflict of interest, and which is a very, very problematic conflict of interest, because it often impacts on the way you work, the stands you take. Again, this is unprecedented as far as the world is concerned. These kind of direct ownerships of hospitals is very peculiar to South Asia, where doctors invest in hospitals. So I understand where that comes from, but I'm afraid, and this is my view, and this is where I will slowly stop, that the trend all over the world, and this is where we are inevitably moving towards in India, is not by individual patients paying out of pocket, but by third-party payment. That is number one. Number two, governments increasingly are realizing, by governments, I mean political parties, all across the world, but slowly in India, that health is a sensitive issue in political terms. You can get votes. So, of course, they are going to promise healthcare. They are going to promise right to care. And I really don't think we can stop the tide. If we come out fighting it, we will look, people will, I mean, it's my view that people will start viewing this even more suspicion. Even right now also they are suspicious of us, even more suspicious. I think we need to engage with governments in an enlightened manner. Of course, we need to point out to governments that they need to spend, but I think to oppose the idea of a right to care, to oppose the idea that there will be a third party payment, to oppose the idea that emergency care is something that we are not bound to give, is not only, in my view, a little unmodern or not understanding the trends all over the world and in India, but perhaps putting us up for even more hostility from ordinary citizens. Incidentally, both in Rajasthan and in other places, the IMA was heavily consulted. I have spoken to somebody who was part of the Rajasthan committee, and at every stage it was consulted. Yes, I think our interests should be looked after. Yes, we should demand that payments be made in time, payments be made. But what often has happened, and has happened in Rajasthan, and I'm afraid, and I will stop here, that we come out being seen as people who are completely opposed to the idea of slowly moving towards more accessible care, universal health care. And that's something that I think we need to rethink on. Our professional organizations need to rethink on. I'll stop here. I've already extended by 10 minutes. Apologies for that. But I'm open to discussion, questions, and very, very happy to be contradicted and very happy to be sort of pulled up for what I said. Thank you. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for having insightful session, I would say. But there are, I mean, as an ordinary doctor, I would say I have a couple of questions in mind. The first question that comes is the quality of care that the government institutions are delivering, and the quality of care that the private institutions, not all, but I would say most of them, are delivering. It's quite different. And the third party insurance that is coming, the payments and reimbursement rate and the amount they are getting is so what in terms of hospital owners, what they are saying is very less, very that is not at par with the reimbursement that is happening in in Western countries, I would say. The quality of care and the reimbursement. So what's your take on that? Because there are a lot of yojanas that is happening, but the payment are delayed and the payments are not enough. That's what their
Yeah.
opinions.
Yeah, there's a hand up, but let me just quickly. So I think you need to raise the new point, which is the payments are not enough, right?
Yeah.
Delayed is
Yeah.
one thing. I address that.
Yeah.
But insurance payments are always delayed. Today in my work, also your work, also insurance payments are delayed. So you to say that they are delayed, it's known, right? But
yeah,
they're not enough is another point, and let me try and respond to that. So look, we have a peculiar model in my view, which is that we tend to earn money by individual patients paying higher amounts rather than by volumes. I think that's one challenge because in healthcare, you can earn money by volumes, and there are institutions which earn money by volumes. So what is enough? If you can give me a definition, I'll be delighted. Three doctors sitting together may not agree on what is enough. A cardiac surgeon may tell you that, what you earn, that person, because of his abilities, needs to earn 10 times you. A liver transplant surgeon may say that, I have special skills, therefore I need. So what is enough is a big problem. And if anybody can rationalize that, there have been attempts made based on your training, based on your skills, but it's a very difficult question. So what is enough? If you are saying that ordinary Indian doctors are in deep trouble financially, I'm somebody who's not willing to buy that. Certainly, I don't see that around me. I've said it publicly that we are privileged on the scale of our people. Please don't compare yourself to Western situations. I think as doctors of modern medicine in India, we are fairly secure. I'm talking of the larger perspective. So to say that it is not enough, we need to first define enough, I'm afraid. And that's a very challenge. Gaurav, I know it all depends on who you are, what is your specialty, where you're working. But what if you want to earn by volumes? What if you want to earn more by serving more people rather than individuals paying higher? So it's a catch-22, in my view.
Okay. We have a question from Dr. Vinith. Dr. Vinith, you can unmute and ask questions. Yeah.
Sure.
So
Sure.
there are few points I would like to put into it. That first of all, as Sir has said, that the systems, the insured system and all. So that means the basic thing is, are we accepting that it's now going to be a third party payment all over the world? The question where the whole thing starts in this agitation part of it. One thing is that we are not opposing the cost cutting or everything. The primary thing which was there was that it's basically the nomenclature or the implication which goes into the public is that right to health. Actually, it is not right to health. The thing itself shows it should be better nomenclature as right for emergency treatment. And the first problem was that in the bill or whatever government was coming, nothing quite definitive of emergency was put. That whether a APD, a person coming with chest pain, APD also is an emergency, as well as a cardiac patient also is an emergency. But for a patient, a chest pain is an emergency. So that one thing is there. Another thing is that I have got a data of the payments of a very flagship scheme of Rajasthan government, that Chiranjeevi Yojana, which government of Rajasthan is having for last 4-5 years. And I have a data that for the section which ended on the 12th December 2022, the total requisition of the from the private sector or the work done by in government as well as private sector was 236 crores of rupees were asked, out of which the government till April 23 has paid only 58.4 crores. So this includes the rejection as well as the payment which was not done. So this is the type of the payment which is being done till now. And now the same system needs to be implemented on the emergency system also, because the bill as itself says that this tells about the right to emergency treatment, not to right to health. But as we have done the agitation, we have contacted people also during the time of agitations, the sense or the implication which the public was going, as well as which the media as well as the government, the paid sector which is letting it in the public, is that you have got a free treatment. आप जयपुर में आइए, राजस्थान में आइए, you will have all banners full of government saying that now you don't need to आपको खर्च की जरूरत नहीं है, आपको free इलाज मिलेगा. Now the problem is when I as a layman know that I have a right of free treatment, then who is going to explain them at the time of emergency that okay, no, this is not emergency, this is. So there was at least there was nothing defined that these are the emergency, cardiac, this, whatever emergency, they are defined 3 emergency. One is the animal bite, one is the road traffic accident, and third is any other emergency as described by the competent authorities, which is again a thing which anything can be put. One thing. Another is the payment delay, which already is being told. I given you the examples. And the 10. The other question which is asked is that sometimes these bills are over exaggerated and all, and there is false billing and all those things are there. So okay, if for a second we agree to that if all these things are there, then why you want to extend this system to the emergency treatment also, which is right now it will begin. The fourth thing is that till now, the whatever one act which respected sir has told of the 1958 Supreme Court, these things about some person being denied, but during for last 10 years, 5 years in Rajasthan, I am talking, not all over the world, how many cases of such is being reported where the emergency treatment has been denied by the competent hospitals. Initially there was objections that somebody living near me will come to me in my hospital with a heart attack and says, no, since you are a medical establishment, you have to treat me. It hardly matters whether you are eye surgeon or this thing. But that is very foolish, because the person himself knows that if he goes to an eye hospital, he will not get any emergency for a cardiac problem or a heart disease. So that part is already there. So, but if you give it in a form of a right for something, then all those things which sir has already accepted, that some violence cases and all those things have come because of the larger bills and all those things. But if you give something in a right which is misinterpreted, then day in, day out, you will have problems. So our agitation was for the form of the
Clarity.
bill, not for the improvement or compensation of what that part was there. So I think that's a wrong narrative which has been seen by the rest of the country and the world, that it is against those things like that.
Right. No, I good to hear that, and I'm aware that when this kind of thing comes up, often in the public din that takes place, the subtleties and the nuances get lost, and therefore sometimes it is portrayed as doctors resisting their duty to provide
Exactly, sir. Exactly.
care. Yeah, I understand that. But I'm just saying, and this is not something of our making, but I think the problem, therefore, is that what I alluded to, which is that many of you, many of our colleagues, many of my own friends, batchmates, who are running hospitals, their own hospitals, they are doing great work in terms of delivering care in their specialty. And now we are in a situation where we are moving towards third-party payment, whether we like it or not, uh, because obviously individual payment is a huge strain. So this readjustment that needs to take place towards a new reality is, I think, becoming a challenge, because for years together we had a certain model. When I was on the committee, I was told by many people, I said that I was told that if you push this whole idea of third-party payment, right to care, it's only the big hospitals who will survive and the small hospitals will die. Now, when that came up, I did say yes. I said I'm nobody to decide. I'm just a member of the committee. But the IMA attacked 4 or 5 of us who are on that committee, saying that you guys are walking into the trap set by some kind of conspiracy theory, set by big hospitals which want to sort of wipe out competition, kind of thing. But honestly, if you look at the future, if you're in the field, do you really think that the current model that you're working in is really a good sustainable model, which is that people come, they pay you out of pocket? Maybe in ophthalmology, different, but when we talk about surgery, when we
Yeah,
talk
I
about
understand, sir.
procedure, this model where people pay out of pocket is really not sustainable, because every day there is a conflict, every day there is a clash, there is stress for both parties. It's not just for the patient, but for the doctors.
Yeah, I
So
understand.
yeah,
Sir,
yeah.
but sir, one small point. Uh, in that way, I wanted to know that whether shifting toward, not for this part, but shifting as such towards a model of insurance-based model, which in the world, in USA, has already been clashed. It is not a working model. So why are we trying to shift to that model? Because sir, the cost and that thing, you agree, it start blooming after the insurance players have come into the play. Before that, uh, maybe okay, the bringing up of newer technology and every state of the art things, it requires money, but the amount of things the medical bill have inflated is not comparable to the inflation in the money. But if you cut down the scenario where the insured are not, insurance company were not into the play. So, and plus we have seen in America, the previous president model, that thing has crashed because of this problem also. So I have a comparative data between America and Canada, Denmark and the other European country, UK and the other country. But so just for these things, the MMR of USA is 32.9% per lakh, where it spends 18.3% of the GDP of USA, and the MMR of Canada is 8.7% only, where it spends only a lesser amount of it. But Canada has got a different type of system, and the USA has got a different type of insurance-based system. So insurance-based system causes more of taxation all over the society, and still the system is not working. So why are in Asian countries or in India we are following that system, which already seems to be a disaster in that country?
No, absolutely. This is a very, very valid question. And I have no single line answer.
It cannot be there. I understand.
Suffice to say that the Bore committee recommended an NHS model, which is a state-sponsored, you can say state-sponsored universal healthcare. We somehow went uh, astray at some stage. And now that we have a large private sector.
Yeah, I understand. Sorry, sir. But the thing is ki, replicating NHS in India is practically not possible, because that NHS part is designed for a certain amount of population with certain amount of infrastructure. We have totally a different scenario. So you can, it is an ideal system where whole of the India is served by government owned systems, everything will be good. But do you think it is practical in India with so much of diversity, so much of lacking all those things? As you rightly said that India GDP is less than 1% of health sector in that way. So why can't we build our own intrinsic system rather than copying to all those national and global and all those things? We can incorporate both the things which is prevalent, because the what we feel rightly is that the prevalent system without all those external policies were quite good and working. So it can be modified with the factors taking into account our local factors rather than copying that this happens in America. Because when we say that, okay, don't compare yourself to a consultant who's sitting in America, how much he's getting, but we want to compare our system with America. Don't consider ourselves a cardiac surgeon who is sitting in UK and doing surgery, but we want to consult our system with, compare our system with America. So I think we should be clear enough that their system is their system, our system is ours. We should try to improve our system. We are not against any, obviously, end of the day, we are the person who are going to deliver the health services. Whatever is the policy makers, whatever upper things are there, finally it is between me and my patient, between you and your patient. So if that system improves, that atmosphere improves, and all the facilities improve, is going to benefit me only. So our aim, this RTH movement was, no to RTH movement was about all those things, not only just to oppose that there is a cost cutting or whatever things, and about the technicalities of the bill, which in future may again come in the same form in which it is being perceived.
Right. I'll just quickly respond. I mean, you said many things and many of them are important points, but this is not about copying, right? This is about health models, and there are health models all across the world. By the way, we don't copy, but we also talk about a certain model of economic progress. We talk about how to build roads, so this is a model that we are talking about. And there's no harm in saying that there are these 2 or 3 models in the world. And we of course modified. But I also want to say that when you say that NHS is not relevant to India, I'm not sure why you say that. By the way, Sri Lanka for many years clearly took an NHS model, doing very well in healthcare compared to India. There are countries, Thailand is doing very well. So yes, the size is an issue. I'm not denying size matters, but I think it is not so much about its an applicability. Our will to apply it, I think that was lacking, because we were ideally placed to inherit the NHS. We were ruled by the British. We inherited so many of their ideas, our railway system, so there was no reason not to inherit it. The question today we have to address is, where do we position ourselves as doctors? Because actually we are, honestly, whilst we may be delivering the care, but the government has some commitment. We are moving towards the sustainable development goals. Healthcare needs to move ahead. We need to deliver preventive care. So we have to decide whether we want to engage with them in an enlightened manner, or we want to be seen as people. Because what you said right now, we are talking for 20 minutes, we understand each other. But when you get a WhatsApp messages, and when it goes on WhatsApp, and I will tell you that in Maharashtra, when I was a member of the committee, there was a WhatsApp message being circulated saying these are agents of corporate hospitals. So, when you get into that kind of thing,
yeah, I understand, sir.
Yeah, I
Incidentally,
think
I also
people,
got training from
and
Maharashtra
people,
also.
including doctors, tend to get therefore carried away. So I think we must keep our arguments solid, and also a little enlightened, because it's not, of course, it is about our practice, but it is also about tomorrow our family members, our people. We need good care. I mean, if I'm worried about my own healthcare, no, right? So if tomorrow I'm traveling in rural Rajasthan, right, and I have a RTA, if I know that I'm going to get immediate care without my money being considered, why is it such a bad thing? So I think
it's not a, sir, the thing is, this is not a bad thing, and no, we are not opposed to all those things.
right.
2 points you told about this, that one thing is the good care, quality care, and availability of the care. That's the two things. So right now also, sir, because incidentally I also got training from Maharashtra. I was in KEM Bombay for 4 years of my postgraduate trainings, and I worked for 1 year in Bombay BRC. So at that time, during 95 to 19 something, that period. So at that time, the working scenarios were different in Maharashtra also, and now in Rajasthan also. So now, sir, one thing, sir has said that we should be enlightened and all. So quality of services. Now you know that now in Rajasthan we are having 32 medical colleges opened by government in a spree of maybe 1 month, and then the government made Rajasthan 52 districts from 32 to 52. So and in next step you are going to have a 52 medical colleges in Rajasthan within a couple of months or maybe. But opening a medical college, does it ensures the quality and all? At present, all the 32, out of which 32, only 16 or 17 medical colleges have got basic facilities. Rest of the things are just for the namesake of it. So when the government is trying, okay, that could be the first stage, but then it will take maybe 10 more years for that institute to grow up to a level where, because most of the time at present what is happening, sir has said that when he is moving all around in the Rajasthan, somebody is moving around and got an RTA. Now the state of the government status is that the best they could do is give a primary treatment for a head injury in a medical college or in a district hospital, which is the tertiary level hospital of the government setup, and refer them to SMS Jaipur.
Right. No, I'm aware of that. Yeah. Well, by the way, that is actually almost throughout the country.
There's the state of the thing. And so in all those scenarios, many private sectors are doing still good, and they are offering quality services at that place. And most of the time it is not happening, sir. I think it is somewhat more exaggerated that khet are being sold or something are being given for primary treatments and all. Most of the time it is not like that. And the system is going on. Just putting it something new and taking out the skeleton out of the closet, I don't think. It was not too much or required at this time.
Okay, sure.
Thank you, Dr. Nagral, for having such a wonderful interactive session. A lot of insights from both the sides, and it was very interesting session. Anything in concluding remark you want to say, Dr. Nagral?
Well, no, not really. I think. Well, thank you again. I see hope in the fact that we are sitting on a Sunday evening talking about these issues, because it's only if we talk in an informed manner that maybe because we are important players in healthcare, and our views are important, and but we need to look at various perspectives. So therefore, I think these are small efforts towards that. And also, by the way, just a quick comment on Rajasthan is that, so Rajasthan, one of the reasons why something like this is pushed is also because Rajasthan has a very strong presence and history of civil society organizations and NGOs working in health. By the way, the Right to Information Act comes from Rajasthan, the work of Aruna Roy and all. So we must remember that there are these organizations in Rajasthan which really take up so many issues related to people, and that's why they have pushed the government, in my view. So we all enjoy the Right to Information Act. We don't enjoy the Right to Education Act because obviously we belong to that strata, but there are people who have benefited from right to education. So I think partly it's a moment, slow moment, which is, in my view, inevitable. We can choose to deal with it in a informed manner and an enlightened manner. That's what I would say in conclusion. And thank you for this opportunity again.